Ready to talk about OJ?
Orenthal James Simpson.
What a case, huh?
Yeah, the trial of the century. Now there's...
Do you believe it's the trial of the century?
100%. It had the best attorneys ever formed together. If you had like a basketball team, it would be like Kobe and Michael Jordan and Shaq, and LeBron.
He assembled the dream team, right?
Well, Robert Shapiro did. Robert Shapiro was the first attorney on the case. So Robert came on after OJ got arrested. Actually, technically, Bob Kardashian did. Robert Kardashian did. Kim Kardashian's dad was a part of the case.
Can I ask you this? Because we're going to get into so many details, obviously. We're going to get deep. Yeah. But like as a big picture, what do you think is so important about this case? What is it about this case, the O.J. Simpson murder trial, that makes it the trial of the century?
You have everything. You have a handsome man who happens to be a famous actor. You have a very good-looking wife. The trophy wife.
Let's back up one sec. USC football star, Heisman Trophy winner, NFL legend.
Right.
And then actor, entertainer.
Spokesperson for Hertz. Beloved. He came from really difficult background. I'm not sure if you know that he was involved in juvenile fights and involved in a juvenile system. He was involved a little bit of gangs. He admitted during a deposition that when he was sued after he was found guilty, admitted that he was a part of a gang a little bit because of his neighborhood. So, he was a true Hollywood American story. He came from the ghettos to the rise of fame through football, and he was a very, very smart guy.
Yeah, you can tell. I mean, in preparing for this podcast and revisiting that legendary trial, which we were all glued to, right?
I was.
I was reminded how eloquently he speaks, how amazingly he puts everything. He's such a good speaker. The way he frames his sentences, the charm, the level of like humility. Maybe it's false humility. Maybe he's that good of an actor, but he just really seems to win you over with his facial gestures, his verbiage, the way he speaks. OJ, I'm talking about.
Yeah.
The few times they let him speak publicly in court when the cameras were on him, and then in other interviews. Anyway, continue. So yeah, that's what you think is amazing.
So what's amazing is you had a guy that was super rich, super famous. You had the wife. You had the perfect lifestyle. You had his perfect friends. Everything was perfect up until she was mutilated. I mean, she was decapitated. Her entire neck was sliced. And again, my heart goes out to Nicole Brown Simpson's family. My heart goes out to Ronald Simpson's family. It's a terrible thing what happened to them. And, I just can't imagine what they're going through. But at the time, OJ, when he was accused, it was unfathomable that he would do something like that. My friends, I was in New York at the time, and when we were at a bar, we were just talking about it, and none of my friends believed it. They were big football fans. I said, come on, why would OJ kill somebody? The guy's rich. I mean, the guy could get any woman he wants. Why would he kill her? Why would he be jealous? And so what I took away from this, the reason why this is the trial of the century was because you had, at the time, the L.A.P.D., who was essentially going through a little bit of a black eye with their reputation at the time in the 90s. You got
a little bit of a black eye?
Well, a big black eye. If you go back to Rodney King and you see a bunch of white police officers beating up on an African-American gentleman, and then they were found not guilty, and then OJ gets arrested 2 years later, the jury has that on the predominantly African-American jury. 10 African-Americans on that jury are still coming off of that pain of seeing how there was a division in racial justice. And, at our podcast, we say, and justice for some. Well, look at OJ's case and look at what happened to Rodney King. We can make an argument that you do get justice if you sometimes are white or sometimes you have the proper legal team, right? Look at OJ. He had the proper legal team. I would make an argument that if he didn't have that proper legal team, he probably would have been found guilty.
I'm glad you brought up, you're getting to a race issue. You haven't really said the word race yet, but I kind of feel it bubbling under there because you're talking about the L.A.P.D., you're talking about prior wrongs that they've committed, in this case, the Rodney King case. I'm glad you brought up. Can we look at it? Let's remember what this was.
Yeah.
So this was somewhere here in L.A. It was off Osborne Street near Sun Valley.
Right.
I mean, we all. It's just
you mean the trial? You mean the trial?
No, I'm talking about where they beat this man on the.
Oh, I don't know exactly where.
So
they beat him.
it's not far from where I grew up. It's
okay.
Really infamous case here in L.A. I think it made really incredibly tragic ripples across the country, but why are we talking about Rodney King? Because you and I both can see that the O.J. Simpson trial didn't just take place in a vacuum. It took place in the context of what was already happening in L.A. at that time between the L.A.P.D., between the African American community and the police department, between let's just say it seems like it was almost retribution for the Rodney King trial. It seems like O.J. Simpson is Rodney King episode 2. A lot of people would say that. Let's look at why that might be. Here's the Rodney King incident. It's many officers, a dozen it looks like, who have pulled over a car with one person in it. I'm not sure if Rodney King had a passenger, but he's a black man in the driver's seat. As I remember, he tries to get out of the car because he's a little bit out of it. He opens the door, tries to get out. His seatbelt is still on, so he's pulled back, which causes this jerky motion as he's getting out. The officers will go on to claim that put them in a panic. They were suspecting violent action from Mr. King's side. And you remember this video?
Yes, I watched it in disbelief. When I saw that video, I thought for sure they're going to be found guilty. I didn't think in a million years they would be acquitted of the crimes that they were acquitted of. But you remember something? They were prosecuted in Sylmar. That court is closed now. That Sylmar court is closed now. And that court that jury was predominantly at least 12 white people. And there was a huge disparity in demographic between that jury trial and the one that happened at the O.J. Simpson trial.
It's interesting that we can't discuss this renowned case of O.J. Simpson without having to touch on Rodney King. It's like a must. You have to look at the Rodney King situation. So here we go. Unsuspectingly caught on video from across the street by some spectators, the L.A.P.D.
Yeah.
Almost killing Rodney King.
I remember that.
Here's the video. It's Mr. Rodney King on the ground. He's trying to crawl. But they keep hitting him. The video is pretty jerky. One officer's hitting him with a baton continuously now in the neck. Looks like in the head.
And you have a white person that actually saw this and's taken the video of it and was disgusted at what these cops were doing in Sylmar. I should say these cops that were prosecuted in Sylmar. So, this is obviously when you watch this, you could tell that there is no resisting arrest, right?
He is laid down on the ground like a lump. He's rolling around, out of it, and they're just beating the crap out.
And by the way, this ties into Mark Furman because they can. And I'm going to get into Mark Furman. I'm going to talk about the culture, and I'm going to talk about how today this was still going on when I came to California. And I was representing people that were beat up just like this, just like Rodney King, beaten up. And when I came out here to California, nobody believed that this was going on. Even after the Rodney King verdict, it was very hard convincing juror members.
What year are you talking about? What year?
So this is in 2002.
Yeah.
When I came out to California, this was still going on in Compton, especially, and it was prevalent in Compton. Mm-hmm. And I wound up representing several individuals pro bono at no cost. Wound up getting them off these charges. Winding up suing the sheriffs for these types of similar actions.
Let's talk about what these actions are.
This is what we call.
What's the most egregious thing we're seeing here?
Well, this is assault with a deadly weapon. It's under Penal Code Section 245 of the Penal Code. They could be prosecuted and sent to prison for 3 years each. Each baton violation, each time they strike them.
You're talking about these police officers beating Rodney King.
Yes.
Was that the case in 1992 when this case took place?
Yes.
Okay. So the penal code was not a problem.
Well, we
had it in place. It's just it wasn't applied.
You can't. No, you can't. As a police officer, it's always been in play. You can't beat somebody up for no reason. There's called excessive force.
Right.
But the problem is you have immunity. See, there's qualified immunity. Police officers are allowed to technically beat up people if it's within the color of authority. So they could basically make up something and say, oh, I felt scared, or, this guy was coming at me. It gives them broad powers, which is why the L.A.P.D. was on trial in the O.J. case. They were on trial because they thought that was nonsense. They thought, wait a second now. You want me to believe the same L.A.P.D. that framed or that beat up Rodney King is now accusing this handsome superstar football player of killing his wife when you have no knife, you have no clothes, you have zero evidence. other than a cut on the finger, you want us to convict. And on top of that, you got to remember that the play-by-play was Mark Furman comes into this. You got a racist L.A.P.D. cop who winds up taking the Fifth Amendment on whether or not he used the word, the N-word.
Wild that he did that.
And on top of all that, what I think through the case, where the case was over, I said, it's over. I just yelled, it's over on my TV when I was watching it. It was over when Mark Furman took the Fifth Amendment when he asked,
we're going to get there. We're getting ahead. Let's back up.
Hold on, let me finish. Did you plant evidence? I'll take the Fifth Amendment. That's when OJ won the case.
Yes. So Mark Furman, a clearly racist police officer that was part of the LAPD, he pretty much threw that case in OJ's favor 100%. He's one of the main
There's two torpedoes. One torpedo was that. The other one was the gloves that didn't fit.
Yes, these are the torpedoes. And
two torpedoes.
We're going to talk about how Mark Furman went on the stand on behalf of the prosecution and just tanked him like a torpedo.
Yeah.
A torpedo that does not shoot out to your enemy, but explodes inside your own ship and blows your own ship up.
Yeah.
I don't know what kind of torpedo that is, but that's what they had.
Yeah.
So, but why was Rodney King so big? Let's just back up. It's because of the verdict. What happened? Remind us.
Well, all the white cops were found not guilty.
All of these cops we just watched were found not guilty by a mostly white jury.
Yes.
Out in Simi Valley.
Yes. But Simi Valley, by the way, is where most of the police officers live.
A city known to house a lot of police officers.
A lot of them, yeah.
There's a joke that says, well, the signs say, "Welcome to Simi Valley, pull over."
Right. And every other person is either a cop or related to a cop.
Right.
So do you think you're going to give the cops, they're going to give them a fair trial, the Rodney King in Simi Valley?
So these police officers who committed this beatdown of Rodney King, either in, I want to say, you named it, Sylmar.
Simi Valley.
No. The beatdown happened off
I think it happened in Sylmar.
Yeah, Sylmar, Pacoima, I might
Somewhere
even say
in that
Sun
area.
Valley,
Yeah.
up in La Crescenta. Definitely not Simi Valley, which is a good, 40 minutes due sort of west of there. So whoever prosecuted this or whoever defended the cops somehow managed to get this correct outcome of a favorable jury in Simi Valley, not close to where this took place, with a favorable jury in a city mostly filled with cops. How does that happen?
Well, it's the demographic. It's the jury demographic. It's the same reason why if OJ was prosecuted in Santa Monica, he would have been found guilty.
Okay, why didn't they try the cops in Sylmar or Pacoima where this beating took place?
Well, at the time, there were the courthouses that were designated, and that courthouse happened to be designated, or that crime had to be designated to that courthouse because it was within that jurisdiction. It could have went to Van Nuys, I guess.
Okay.
It went to that court. It was just designated to that. There was no setup. There was no...
But clearly
conspiracy.
a favorable jury for these police officers.
It's almost like me telling you, why not just do all trials in Compton? That's the most fairest jurisdiction out of the whole jurisdiction. You get like a 90% acquittal rate in Compton, right?
Yeah.
But, I can't pick the courthouses. If you stab somebody in Compton, you go to Compton court. If you beat somebody in Sylmar, you go to Sylmar court.
Do you feel like the acquittal rates in Compton are still high today?
Yeah, much higher than other courts.
And we would attribute that to the community, the citizenry, the mostly minority, Black and Hispanic, mostly African-American community of Compton having a deep suspicion of the police force or distrust of the criminal justice system.
Yeah, distrust is a better word. Yeah, so going back to OJ, so when they did the OJ case, they started with that mentality that why is the police charging OJ? The LAPD was on trial. OJ was never on trial.
Right.
So from the get-go, they wanted them to prove why the hell do you think that OJ is guilty? Because we're pissed off at you, and that's how they started the case. They started out the case, in the red.
Sure, and let's look at why. Because 92, all the police officers get acquitted of beating Rodney King.
Yeah.
And remember what happened?
The riots.
L.A. burned down.
Right.
Like, to a degree, riots took place throughout all these communities.
Right.
Live on the news, we were watching like shops being burned down across streets in downtown LA, inner city neighborhoods.
Innocent people getting dragged out of their trucks, being bricks thrown at them. Reginald Denny.
I remember we all remember the video of Reginald Denny being pulled out of his truck as a truck driver.
They didn't do anything. They just pulled him out just because he didn't have...
He was a white guy.
Yeah, he didn't have dark skin, so they threw a brick at his head.
Yeah, he was a white guy, and this was a purely racist attack, you can say,
100%.
on him. I mean, they're like, there's a white guy.
Yeah.
We're all black. We are angry as hell. Why were those police officers acquitted? This is ridiculous. That's a miscarriage of justice, granted.
Yeah. 100%.
So they beat down this white man, almost like a parallel retribution for beating down Rodney King in a way.
Yeah, and I think that ultimately that's what the jurors had in their mind when they went and they listened to all the evidence in the OJ case. And I think it came to a head, like I told you, when they had Mark Furman, who was a nasty cop, racist cop, a liar.
He's one of the cops involved in this investigation. So,
I
2 years.
I would actually tell you that Julie McKinney changed the entire conjecture of this case. She's the lady that nobody knows about. She's the lady that was recording Mark Furman without Mark Furman knowing about it. So she's the one that called up the OJ team after Mark Furman said that he's never used the N-word. She was watching the trial. So when F. Lee Bailey was asking the questions, have you ever used the N-word? He had no idea that was, the fact that he said he never used it. And then Julie McKinney, his ex-girlfriend, calls and says, I got the tapes. Julie McKinney actually was interviewed and said she feels horrible. Until this day, she knows she changed the entire conjecture of the OJ case. The trajectory
there is
changed.
no doubt that moment the case changed.
Yeah.
I mean, well, let's look at the setup of the case. 2 years have gone by after the riots.
Right.
LA is pissed at the L.A.P.D.
Yeah.
The inner cities, the communities, minority communities have a deep distrust, way deeper than even today. And you're saying there's still a distrust that lives on to today.
To a certain extent.
Okay. And suddenly there's this thing that pops up on all of our TV screens, the Bronco chase. This is when even the African-American community finds out.
Right.
This is when I find out. This is when you find out. When our TV goes off, they switch from whatever you're watching, whether it's a soap opera, a sporting event, news, they switch to this live coverage of O.J. Simpson in a white Bronco with 10 police cars behind him or more. It looks, I heard one analyst describe it as sort of like the frame in which the African-American community views this entire case. We're seeing a black man in a car and 20 squad cars behind him trying to get him. It's a bad look. It looks aggressive. It looks militarized. Now, I might sit here and go, no, dude, I see someone trying to run away from the cops. It looks bad for OJ. But it seems like in a community that already had a deep distrust for the police, when the first image, the birth of reality TV, as we might say, is this football star, entertainer, OJ, in a white Bronco, with a military squadron of vehicles behind him on the freeway. He's not even going fast in the beginning, if you remember. He's kind of just cruising and they're behind him. What do you think? I mean, is that the frame? Because you're talking about race came in. We're going to get to Mark Furman. He's like the proof. He's like the proof in the pudding. It sucks but for the case, but he is. Remember that moment? Do you remember seeing that Bronco chase?
Yeah, I was watching the NBA Finals and I got cut off. I all of a sudden I think it was Ted Koppel that we're going to cut to ABC where O.J. Simpson is being driven by, we believe, A.C. Cowlings. So I was watching that, and I don't know if you're familiar. O.J. was supposed to turn himself in that day. He went to Bob Kardashian's house, Kim K's dad's house, to turn himself in, and he just disappeared with A.C. Cowlings. And then he did some weird things. He went down the Nicole Brown Simpson cemetery.
Who was driving the Bronco?
A.C. Cowlings.
He was. So it wasn't OJ. It wasn't OJ by himself.
No, and the reason why
Let's look at it while you talk. Tell me.
And the reason why they had that chase, just so you know, the reason why it looked military is because he had a gun in the car, and people knew he had a gun in the car, and literally people were just lining up with OJ signs, "Free OJ, go OJ" on the highways. They were afraid some nut job, according to Tom Lang, who's one of the detectives in the case. He was afraid that some nut job would go up to the car and start knocking on the window, "Go OJ," and start rooting for OJ, because people were rooting for OJ at the time. So
the community was rooting for OJ.
That's why you had all the cars, because you had no idea whether OJ was going to shoot the people that were going to come to his car, whether he was going to shoot himself.
How did we know
A.C. Cowlings? You didn't know who he was going to shoot.
How did we know there was a gun in the car at this moment? The moment
because A.C. Cowlings called up the
You're right. Look at the NBA Finals, by the way, happening simultaneously, split screen.
I was watching it. Was it the Bulls? It was the Bulls.
It's the Bulls.
I think I was watching Michael Jordan.
Wow.
Can you imagine? I was watching Michael Jordan and they cut it off. I was pissed.
What a slice of history.
Nobody cuts Michael Jordan off.
Except for O.J. Simpson.
Even I was upset. I wanted to see Michael play. I mean, come on.
So this was the day the Juice was supposed to turn himself in. He showed up at his buddy's house and they decided to flee?
Yeah, they said. Well, according to OJ, he wanted to go to Nicole Simpson's house. He didn't know what he was going to do. He was despondent. He was upset. So nobody really knows. But in the post interviews, he said, "Yeah, I might have killed myself. I don't know." But he had a gun in the car, wrapped in a towel, laying on the floor. He had at least one passport. He had pictures of his children in the car. He had a note that Bob Kardashian read. Do you remember the note that he read?
Sort of a suicide note?
It was a suicide note. He said, don't remember me for who I was, this lost person. Remember me for, the OJ that I am. As a lawyer, just so you know, Tony, the fact that he took off was really bad because it makes him look guilty. In fact, Marsha Clark used that.
Yeah, no shit.
Why would you take off if you're not guilty? Why would you want to kill yourself if you're not guilty? The guy has a guilty conscience. I mean, that's actually a jury instruction. It says if somebody takes off, you could use that flight as evidence of consciousness of guilt.
Yeah. Yeah, that looks bad. Really bad.
Yeah, he had a lot of bad stuff. And
what did he have in the vehicle with him? Didn't he have a ski mask?
He had a ski mask. Well,
two.
He had a mask. He called it a party mask. Post after he sugarcoats it and says, "Yeah, I had a mask and I had a gun and I had all this stuff." But
was it a face covering mask?
I don't know. I can't tell you for sure, but I do know he had his kids' pictures with him, and he went to Nicole's grave. And what's interesting is people saw him at the grave yelling, and they called the police. He was yelling at the grave. He admits this later on that he was yelling at Nicole. You got to understand something that, in my opinion, and doing this 25 years, I've interviewed thousands of criminals. All right, sociopaths too. I'm going to tell you, I'm not a therapist. And I'm not a forensic psychologist, but I will tell you he has characters of narcissistic personality disorder, 100%. How do I get to not narcissistic personality disorder? Well, if you look at the DSM-5, which is the diagnostic manual for psychiatrists, you'll see like grandiose behavior, a sense of entitlement, excellence among himself, the ability to think that everybody loves you all the time, and everything revolves around you, no empathy. So he convinced Howard Weitzman, his attorney at the time, I got this. I could talk to the cops. Only a narcissist would be able to do that, because I'll tell you right now, there's no way Howard Weitzman told OJ, yeah, go talk to the cops. No criminal defense attorney would allow their client to ever talk to the cops. In fact, if OJ pulled that on me, I tell OJ, if you go talk to the cops, I'm off the case. I'm not even going to talk to you anymore because you're going to F up this case.
Right.
And that's how you know this guy's got narcissistic personality disorder, because he's not listening to anybody. He's doing what he wants. And if you take a look at all his interviews, he's always blaming everybody himself except for himself.
And that tends to give that person an outside view of themselves too. Like they can see themselves as if from a camera and perform to be super charming. Like he seems so charming.
That's one of the traits of a narcissist.
They're
extremely superficially charming.
Superficially charming, right. And they can almost see it all playing out. The smile comes at the right moment. The humility is false. You can feel that in OJ's interviews.
Yeah.
He wins you over. I mean, I watch him and I know that, and I watch it and I'm like,
but if you watch
like this guy,
if you watch carefully, if you watch carefully, though, you'll see he's nothing but a BS artist.
It seems
underneath
like that.
100%. If you take a look at that, so here's the thing. So there's two opinions, right? There's the court of law. People always ask me, RJ, do you think OJ is guilty? Okay. So the legally correct answer, if you were in law school, is yes, because if there's a reasonable doubt, you have to let the person go. Okay.
You mean no, he's not guilty?
If it's legally correct that he's not guilty. Right. That's what I said. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Not guilty.
Yeah.
So he's legally correct. Now, the court of public opinion is different. If you want to chat about this, you'll get...
We're chatting.
You'll get 75% of the people saying he's guilty.
Yeah.
It's clear to them. But just from the court perspective,
yeah.
the defense attorneys were right till this day that it was a legally correct verdict. That doesn't mean the court of public opinion should agree to it.
Okay, let's talk. Let's humor. I feel that that's true.
Yeah.
And I'm going to give you a little bit more layperson take on that, which is... my gut feeling from watching everything, from researching for this, from living through the trial live, and now revisiting it so many years later, is he probably did it. He probably killed her, and then Ron Goldman, the waiter who she was seeing, came in on the scene, stumbled upon the scene, and was killed also to cover his tracks. And then he assembled the team of super lawyers that found the vulnerability in the case, and the vulnerability was the distrust of the L.A.P.D. And they made it very clearly seem like the L.A.P.D. was setting up O.J. Simpson. And the jurors found that very credible, and so they looked at the strict legal standard we have in place to convict somebody for a crime this heinous, which is beyond a reasonable doubt. And the jurors said, No, we have reasonable doubts. The reasonable doubts are Mark Furman. He's a known racist. He lied in this trial, and he got caught lying on tape in this trial. And you're going to talk about what that was. It was his girlfriend, you said, was secretly recording him?
Julie McKinney recorded him saying the N-word 42 times, and Judge Ito only allowed 2 times for it to come in.
And that was enough to sink the ship. Just those 2 times.
Just that Mark Furman was enough.
Doubt.
There was other stuff too, like it was Fung, Detective Fung, the forensic.
He mishandled some evidence, like the vial of blood. Was
handling
it?
The vial of blood with his hands. I mean, typical like 101 evidence rule collecting.
So,
you wear freaking gloves.
F-ups by the L.A.P.D.
There was a lot of F-ups. It was a sloppy investigation. It was just, you know what? The dream team pounced on all these mistakes.
These mistakes and the past wrongs of the L.A.P.D. and the past recordings of Detective Mark Furman saying the N-word and then denying saying it in court and getting caught, and then having to do the most embarrassing thing of take the fifth, which I understand you're going to explain as a criminal defense attorney. Sometimes you have to do. I get it. It just looked really bad. It looked so bad when he did that. Well, all of that made the case just sink to the bottom of the ocean. Whereas it's probably true that this man did murder these 2 people.
Well, you know, if you're a juror and the prosecution is claiming that your blood was found on the socks, on the glove, in the Bronco, but the person that collected it was a racist person that took a Fifth Amendment as to whether or not they planted evidence. So watch this. Mr. Furman, did you ever plant evidence in this case? I take the fifth. How the hell is the jury going to convict somebody like that? In fact, I'll go so far as to say, if OJ was convicted, I was going to go apeshit, because that alone is reasonable doubt. That's a legally correct verdict. Now you add the other things to it. You add the bloody gloves that don't fit. Okay, that's another problem with the case. You have other issues with the case also. You have forget the fact that you don't have the knife and you don't have the clothes, but you don't have any witnesses.
I mean, how much? Right.
You have no witnesses, and he comes out of his house completely fine with just his thumb that was, messed up. And I don't know if you know about this. Ronald Goldman was a martial artist, apparently. I don't know if he had a black belt or whatever, but according to OJ, when he wrote his "If I Tell It, If I Did It" book.
I know where you're going with this. Yeah.
So apparently he was defending himself and kicking OJ's ass. And OJ says, "If I did it, read the book." I read the book. He says, well, in a hypothetical, he poses his confession in a hypothetical, by the way. He says, "Oh, so you know karate? Let's see what you could do with me, my fist, and my knife." That's what he said in this hypothetical. Oof, okay. So Ronald Goldman pops up. And he's arguing Ronald. He doesn't know Ronald's coming from the Mezzaluna restaurant at the time. He's following and stalking Nicole, according to the allegations. Nicole comes out and starts arguing with them. And from there, a fight ensues. And I guess that he takes Nicole and Ronald and fights both of them at the same time, slitting somebody's. I think he punctured Ronald Goldman's body first. He subdued him like that. And then he just basically grabbed Nicole's hair, took her over, and when they were on the floor, he went and stabbed Ronald Goldman many more times, and the same with Nicole. And by the way, Tony, this is what is indicative of what they call a passion crime. So OJ's making it seem like, it was a drug deal gone bad because Nicole and Faye Resnick, he was blaming Faye Resnick and her friends about doing drugs and things like that. Drug dealers don't kill like this. They've been doing this 25 years. They don't do that. No. It's a simple shot to the head, and they walk away. They're not going to make a big scene. This is what they call a passion kill. Yeah.
So it's very indicative of a crime of passion, bloody sensibility, vengeance, rage, and then dropping a glove at the scene, and then also getting back to the mansion where Simpson lived and dropping another glove there. A little messy, blood everywhere, trails of blood. It seems that way.
Yeah, he says what's interesting in his hypothetical, OJ says he doesn't, if I did it, he always says, if I did it, I don't. Remember something, he wrote that book to make money. I mean, he was broke. He was broke.
Yeah. This is years after the conviction.
This is what OJ called a Hail Mary pass financially.
Yeah.
He figured if I write this book in a hypothetical, it'll do 2 things. Number one, it'll create therapy for him, right? He gets it off his chest. He tells everybody what happens, but now you can't use it against him because it's a hypothetical. And he peppers it with like different facts. He throws in different things in there just to make it look like a hypothetical. But if you read the book or you even listen to the audiobook, he confesses to the whole thing. He says basically, if I did it, this is how I would do it. I took the knife, Ron attacked me.
Yeah.
I defended defended myself
Yes.
because he attacked me. And at that point in time, I blacked out. He says he blacks out.
There's a couple cool things on the internet. Just go search around where body language experts watch and analyze that video of OJ, where he did an interview to promote this book, which you pointed out he wrote solely for the purpose of making money because he was already broke due to this trial. The book is called If I Did It. If you were going to pronounce it the way it's written, it would be
I did it.
It would be If I Did It.
Right.
Because that's how it looked. If you remember the cover of the book,
Right.
it was a tiny little if.
Right.
It almost was like font size 7 or 8 for your graphic design geeks out there. And then it was I Did It. So the book looked like I Did It.
Yeah.
By O.J. Simpson. Yeah. Of course, that's going to sell.
Yeah.
He was going to make millions of dollars.
Yeah, but they stopped the publication now. They
stopped it. They stopped it.
They stopped that. And there was actually people who were willing to pay him $50 million to do a pay-per-view event with a no-holds-barred interview and stuff. Crazy. But thank God they stopped it because I don't think it's fair for him to get that money. But then again, if he got that money, it would have went to the Goldman, so maybe he should have done it.
I said Ron Furman. I meant Ron Goldman, I should have said. And Ron Goldman's dad, Fred Goldman, became a central piece of this trial, remember? Because he became sort of the big character opposite O.J. Simpson, trying to bring O.J. down in the media. Because every time O.J. would play his games, look how charming I am, and look at the smile, and I'm a Heisman Trophy winner. Why would I have done this?
Right.
Fred Goldman, Ron Goldman's father, would get out in front of the cameras and vent his rage, vent his honest, human, authentic emotion at losing his child. Do you remember that?
Of course.
There were a couple times where I remember we'll look at them, but like in the closing of the trial, OJ's last words before it went to the verdict to Judge Ito were like, Judge, I haven't seen my kids in a little while. You know, and I'm hoping to be home soon. Let's end this. And then right after that, you'll see Fred Goldman, his father, the father of the deceased, go out in front of the cameras and sort of emotionally say, well, I'll never see my kid again. I'll never see my kid again. Trying to offset that PR play by OJ's team. Right. It was a really interesting dynamic. And of course, our hearts go out to the Goldmans. We're going to go there, but we were on Furman and we got off track. We got to go back to Furman because as you said, he's the guy. Let's look at him. Do you remember this guy's? This is the testimony.
I remember like it was yesterday.
Do you use the word in describing people?
No, sir.
Have you used that word in the past?
So he's asking him, have you used the N-word? Have you used the N-word?
Not that I recall, no.
Not that I recall.
You mean if you called someone you have forgotten it?
I'm not sure I can answer that question the way you phrased it, sir.
So
blatant.
blatant.
Understanding the question.
They're just dropping N-bombs in court.
Yes.
Offensive,
I want you to assume that perhaps at some time, since 1985 or 6, you addressed a member of the African American race as a Is it possible that you have forgotten that act on your part?
This is on live
No,
TV.
it's not possible.
Are you therefore saying that you have
Watch
not
this. Here's the
used
setup.
that word in the past 10 years, Detective Furman?
Here's the setup.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Boom.
Can you say
Lost.
on your oath that you have not addressed
Here goes another
any
one.
black person as a
Another
or
stab.
spoken about black people as
Stab.
in the past 10 years, Detective Furman?
That's what I'm saying.
Stab.
So that anyone who comes to this court and quotes you as using that word
Go, Anthony Bailey.
in dealing with African Americans would be a liar, would they not, Detective Furman?
Yes, they would.
Stab.
All of them. Correct?
All of them.
Stab.
Let's recap. What did we just see?
He got legally stabbed and he didn't realize it. And you know what's interesting? Van Adder, who's one of the detectives, and Detective Lang, they said when they saw him say that, they started to cringe because apparently they knew that this guy was a racist, a clear racist. I mean, he was a part of a special organization called Ma.
So wait, hold on. Should he have answered? Yeah, I have dropped the N word quite a few times. I do. I'm so sorry.
Well,
I do.
He could.
That would have been the truth because he is a racist and he does drop the N word in a racist way. Right?
He could have said, yes, I've used epithets before in the past. I'm not happy about it. I've cleaned up my act. I was younger. It was a while ago. And he could have left it at that.
If you were his
Judge
attorney,
Ito would have kept it out after
would you have advised him to say that at that time?
Yes, but he lied to his lawyer, obviously. He didn't think anybody had these audio tapes. He called up Julie McKinney after he found out about it and tried to sort of sweep it underneath the rug at the time.
So she secretly taped him and he using these racial epithets, and then she brought them to this trial and said, hey, that dude that just got out on live TV, that detective who said he's never used the N-word, he's lying, and I have proof.
Julie McKinney is a screenwriter, and she hired Mark Furman to help him screenwrite, and he basically gave her inside intel about how the LAPD works. He talked about he's in a secret clan, an organization where they wear hoods and they have tribunals and parking lots, and they do all these things. They ostracize people. They kick them out of. It's called It's called Men Against Women, MAW.
Men Against Women?
Yeah, he's in the organization called Men Against Women. He does not work with females.
The good thing about an organization like that, they're not going to really have a lot of kids, and so it's not going to procreate. It's going to die in one generation. Men Against Women.
Yeah, so he's a part of that. He's
It's
a part
better
of
for us.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm happily married, and so are you, but it's better for our kind.
But this is what the culture was at the time. They were hiring, and Van Natter even said this. These guys, and even Marsha Clark said, "Do we want people like Mark Furman to exist in the LAPD? No. Should he have been?
I'm going to show you.
Should he have been? Should he have been hired? No. Well, as a juror, I'm thinking, listen, why the hell are we here? Why are you wasting my time with that scumbag in this trial? Why are you charging O.J. Simpson with that case with this guy?
What a sad statement for a prosecutor to have to make.
I would have thrown my cupcake at her and my coffee at her
if you were a juror.
Yeah, I would have been done, because
we haven't even gotten into sequestration. If you had been sequestered for up to 9 months.
9 months of that, and you're looking me in the eye and you're telling me, oh yeah, he's a racist, but what are you going to do?
Let's talk about this racist. Here he is. Tell me what you see. Here.
I only have one other question.
I only have one other question, Your Honor.
Right.
What was that? Here we go.
What was that, Mr. Furman?
Detective Furman, did you plant or manufacture any evidence in this case?
Look at how long he pauses.
I assert my Fifth Amendment privilege.
Stop that.
Game over.
Game over. Game over.
Jesus.
That's it. It's game over.
What
All you got to do is play that. How can you possibly convict anybody? Even if OJ was guilty, the jury needed to let him go just because of that. Even if there's a mountain of evidence, like they said, once a cop says that, it's game over. I'm sorry.
Can you imagine?
Can you imagine?
You're on trial, and the cop opposite you is accused of planting blood.
Allegedly.
Accused.
Yeah.
That's allegedly.
Yeah.
Accused of planting blood. Accused of planting a glove. They ask him point blank, did you do that? And he says,
I'll take the fifth.
I assert my Fifth Amendment privilege. What is the Fifth Amendment, RJ?
So the Fifth Amendment means that anything you say won't be used against you.
Well, it's the Fifth Amendment privilege.
You're allowed to not testify. And by taking the Fifth Amendment, you're saying, I'm not going to incriminate myself, which means that if I say something under oath that's wrong, I'm going to be prosecuted. And by the way, later he was convicted of perjury. He took a deal on a perjury charge. I think he pled guilty to a misdemeanor perjury.
Okay.
Van Natter was
too little, too late to save the case.
Right. He tanked the case. And
that would have tanked the case worse.
Van Natter also was found by Judge Ito for reckless disregard of the truth also, even though he disputes that. There's a whole bunch of, there's reasonable doubt riddled all over this, but that doesn't mean that he didn't, you understand, that doesn't mean that OJ didn't kill Nicole Brown Simpson.
Oh, it's two separate issues.
Separate whether issues. We know if he killed him is different than whether they proved that he killed him.
So this trial begins as a man who allegedly murdered two people out of a crime of passion for his ex-wife. But the trial soon becomes about a cop who's dropping N-bombs and allegedly planting evidence. And the trial becomes, as you said earlier, about whether the LAPD is trying to bring down this successful black man and frame him, as opposed to looking at whether OJ killed them.
But that didn't happen till later. The racism in this thing, the race card, as they call it, or what I call the reasonable doubt card, or you have to raise every doubt, was later formulated. They never went with the opening statement, wasn't that Mark Furman was a racist. That was never mentioned.
Well, they didn't know. They didn't know.
So this was a gift from the gods that dropped on their lap. That gift came from Julie McKinney. She called up the OJ team and told F. Lee Bailey, by the way, that's not true. She was outraged at the fact that he was saying no, that he never used the N-word. And she actually had a dilemma. She didn't want to give the team the audio, and when they asked her why, they said, because I knew if I gave her the audio that OJ would be found not guilty.
Now let's look at what happened right after that moment. The guy gets up there, takes his Fifth Amendment privilege. We now have recordings of him saying the N-word. We know he's a racist cop. Now the prosecution tries to scramble. I mean, what are they going to do? They're going to be like, okay, but
There's something called balancing test in California. It's a 352 under the evidence code. Basically means that the judge has to balance the probative value against the prejudicial effect. And what that means is that if you're playing that audio, is that audio going to completely destroy the conjecture of the case? Is it too prejudicial? So what Judge Ito did was, instead of mentioning the N-word 42 times, they gave Johnny Cochran 2 gifts. They said you could mention 2 times, but all they need is 1 time, because he said he never said it before.
Man, they had
twice.
They
2
had,
bombs is pretty big.
They had 42 separate
ones. Can you imagine they played 40? It would have been over. Honestly, they played it. The jurors would have just walked home. They would have grabbed their bags. They would have waved goodbye to everybody. Goodbye. It would have been over if they put 42 times. But the 2 times was enough.
This is a blockbuster. This is a bombshell. This is perhaps the biggest thing that's happened in any case in this country in this decade.
What we vouch for, in terms of Detective Fuhrman, in terms of everyone in this case, is that no one planted any evidence at any time. There has been no false statement made about where that evidence was found, the analysis of the evidence, or its results.
God, what a tough job she has right now. Marsha Clark, you got to respect her, right? She's trying to come out and say, granted, my police officers are racist. Granted, we have recordings of him saying the N-word. We have him taking the fifth and not admitting, not denying that he planted evidence, but I'm here to tell you, as forcefully and convincingly as I can, there was no evidence planted in this case. Are you buying it? Clearly the jury doesn't.
Well, I'll tell you, I think she has some points. The point is, it'd be very hard to get mitochondrial DNA actually planted. It's not impossible, but it's very difficult to do that. And to do that in 3 different locations, behind Cato Kalin's door or in front of his house, the bloody glove was there, then planted in the Bronco, then planted at the scene of the crime. It's very, very hard, almost nearly impossible. But
so science is on her side.
Science is on her side.
The facts are on her side.
Yeah, but the science is on her side, but the problem is that it's not just that. There's other things that are involved. It's not just the DNA. There's a totality of the evidence. There's a lot of other things that are going on. And I'll tell you, Marsha Clark, in my opinion, respect to her, she messed up the case too. According to Tom Lang, there was a plethora of other evidence never used that would have destroyed OJ. What are the other evidence?
Tell me.
There was audio tape. They interviewed the guy for like an hour at the police station with Howard Weitzman. They got him to say inconsistent shit regarding how he injured his thumb. First, he said, I have no idea how I got the injury.
OJ himself?
Yes.
So
he gave 3 different stories. If they played any of his stories in front of the jury, he would have been toast.
Am I to presume the dream team of legal defenders he somehow got that to not be admissible?
No, Marsha Clark chose not to use that. Yeah. Marsha Clark chose not to use that. Tom Lang was asked, the detective, why, because she felt that she felt for her own reasons it was putting L.A.P.D on trial. And she didn't want the L.A.P.D part of that. She didn't want them to think that they were like duping him and they were trying to corner him. But that was a big mistake.
Big mistake.
Because he says 3 things. He said 3 things in that interview. Number 1, how did you get that? They asked him really quickly, what happened to your hand? I don't know. 20 minutes or 30 minutes into it, he goes, oh, I think I shattered it when I found that Nicole died. I threw my glasses in it and it shattered that way. Then he tells another story about he cut it chipping golf. So there's 3 stories there, and you would know. And the problem is the volume of the DNA, the high volumetric DNA evidence, as they call it. It was so much that it wasn't just a cut like OJ said. It was more than a cut because it was dripping big drops. Think of it this way. If you get a nick, you know how much what the drop is going to look like. It's going to be like a pin drop. But if you get a really bad cut, it's going to be bigger, thicker droplets of blood. And those were the types of droplets of blood that OJ had, which was indicating it wasn't just a nick, that he sustained something more substantial, which goes into what Marsha Clark is saying. There was a struggle going on between Ronald Goldman and him.
Yes.
And his glove, fell off during the struggle, and he goes back there's a pool of blood that goes back to the Ford Bronco that leads right to the Ford Bronco. It's in the Ford Bronco. The big mistake that the detectives did, they did not check to see the DNA on the handle. There was blood on the handle at the Bundy Drive address. That was never done. That was a huge mistake. That was never, the DNA was never solidified. It was never taken care of. So there was a whole bunch of mistakes that were done, Tony.
Right. And when you're the jury looking at this, though, none of them are PhD molecular engineers. Right. None of them understand DNA biology to that degree, especially
not back then.
Especially not in 92.
No. Not back then. That was hard to decipher.
And I'm thinking you're the average person and you're sitting there and you have a scale in front of you you're trying to weigh. And on the one hand, you have really complicated scientific evidence of DNA, which we know to be true. We just know it to be absolutely true.
Right.
But you sitting there as the average person don't know that. It's being presented to you and you're like, yeah, that's pretty compelling. And then you've got this other thing that says, maybe that was all done by this racist cop. And by the way, we have recordings of the racist cop being racist. Oh, and by the way, he also lied to you, the juror, in this trial. And we have proof of that. Now you're looking at the science and you're looking at this racist cop and you're like, I can't really understand the science that well. It very well may be true, but I can really understand this. This is clear as day.
I don't even think as a juror I'd be thinking about it too much. I would say to myself, well, if you got a racist cop that took the Fifth Amendment on whether or not he planted evidence, why am I even going over the science? We have no idea whether or not there's any contamination by Detective Mark Furman.
Exactly. It's like the science is secondary to the fact that you have this racist human that's driving the whole process.
I would, as a juror, why would you even consider it? If it's something that may have been tampered with, something that somebody took the Fifth Amendment, why would you even consider it? Why would you even believe Marsha Clark? So, Marsha Clark telling him, oh, we have this and that, good try, Marsha. They had force errors and the defense had no force errors, none. And the defense, in fact, pounced on the errors that they did. Marsha Clark made a million errors, not a million, but it made a few. Chris Darden made probably the worst error in legal history, I think.
What was that?
Asking somebody to do something without knowing the answer.
Oh, it's the glove. It's the glove.
How can you, by the way, they teach you in law school, you never answer a question that you don't know the answer to. And when I teach in law school one day, I'm going to play Chris Darden's video and show the reason why. So, and the other problem is, I don't know if you know, he had rheumatoid arthritis. And he wasn't taking his rheumatoid arthritis allegedly for a month or two before that because he was trying to get his hands to swell up. And on top of all that, the glove was drenched in blood. So a combination of his rheumatoid arthritis swelling up, combined with the glove being super bloody and drenched, and combined the fact that he had another glove on top of the glove.
I couldn't believe that.
And then on top of that, you have OJ making his faces, pretending faces.
I'm looking at Darden going, what are you doing, bro? This is a clown show. I'm so sorry. Well, let's remind people what we're talking about. This is the second. Furman's a big torpedo.
This is another torpedo.
The glove is another Torpedoes.
Huge.
So at the scene of the crime or near the scene of the crime,
right.
kind of upon departing the scene, the criminal has apparently left this glove there. Right? A bloody glove. And then back at the O.J. Simpson's house, there's also another glove left there.
Yeah,
another
understanding, yes.
It just so happens that the guy who discovered this first glove on the scene, or at least was in the picture pointing at the glove, do you remember who the police officer is pointing at the glove at the murder scene?
It would either be Van Natter or Tom Lang.
Sadly, it's Furman.
But Furman was there.
Yeah, he's pointing at it in the photo.
But Furman was there. Furman was part of the 77th precinct. He wasn't a part of the Van Natter and the Tom Lang crew. He was only there because it happened to be in his precinct. They don't like Furman.
Fine.
And by the way, they thought it was weird. They thought it was strange that Mark Furman immediately started drug testing Cato Kalin when he came in the house. Just to show you Mark Furman's mindset. Mark Furman's about control. Is it egotistical? He might be narcissistic also. Is a control freak.
Probably.
When he walked in, the first thing he did was he gave Cato Kalin a horizontal nystagmus test.
Okay.
They do that just to check for the drugs. And when they asked Tom Lang and Van Natter about it, they had no idea why he did it. He's like, I have no idea why he's doing this stuff.
He seems like a real asshole.
He seems like a wild boar. That's how
a reckless police officer.
Yes.
And a racist, proven.
Yes.
Be that as it may,
yes.
He is the guy pointing at the glove in the photo. And then it turns out that he is the guy that discovers the second glove.
Wasn't Van Natter there also?
I don't know if Van Natter was there, but I know for a fact that that Ron Furman discovered the second glove. Mark Furman.
Yeah.
Discovered the second glove at the OJ estate.
Yeah.
So This is pretty bad evidence for OJ if you're going to believe that he left a bloody glove there and then the match of that glove is at his house, also bloody, except for the fact that the guy who discovered it is a known racist who's tanking the whole thing.
Isn't it interesting if somebody else discovered that glove, the whole case may have been changed. If it was Van Adder that found it, if it was Tom Lang that found it, anybody else other than Mark Furman. What the hell is Mark Furman doing at L.A.P.D.? Frankly, it was the L.A.P.D.'s punishment for hiring Mark Furman. They shouldn't have hired that guy in the first place. It's their fault.
Insane. Look at this glove testimony. React to this. What are we looking at? So remember these moments? We're talking about the glove.
Who are you employed by?
Bloomingdale's.
Let me show you the glove that has been marked.
Look at OJ's face.
Look,
Y'all
Chris
confused?
Darden's going, I'm bringing you down, OJ. OJ's going, dude, you are lost. You're losing.
I don't know if OJ's saying that. OJ's thinking, what the hell's going to happen? And then he's happy with the results. That's what I think.
But he looks like he's smirking to me. Like he's kind of knows like this is going to go badly. I know he doesn't fully know that.
He doesn't know that. And that's if you watch any OJ interview, he's got a pompous, arrogant look about him every single day, every single time. I'm in control look.
Right.
But
let's keep looking at it. So she's talking about this is a unique glove. It's sold at this department store. We have receipts that Nicole Brown Simpson bought these gloves.
Yes.
So we are linking these gloves legally to OJ, okay?
Right.
We go on. He's worried. What's going to happen?
Yeah.
People would ask that Mr. Simpson step forward and try on the glove recovered at Bundy as well as the glove recovered at Rockingham.
And by the way, at this point, I think Chris Darden has about 10, 11 years, experience. Marsha Clark has about 10, 11 years. Not a lot, but enough to practice and handle this case, I guess.
As a criminal defense attorney, you look at this moment we're about to watch. Call it for us, play by play.
Right.
I think for you, this is a dream moment. I mean, this is like
my ESPN. Here we go.
This is a 3-pointer, or is this a half court shot that swishes in? What is this?
All right, let's get ready to rumble. Let's go.
Simpson step forward and try on the glove recovered at Bundy as well as the
All right, now Johnny Cochran has got his hand. He's like, what the hell is happening? He's like completely disenchanted with what's happening. He has no idea. OJ's now...
Who has no idea?
Nobody has any idea.
So you think Chris Darden is sort of like...
Nobody has any clue what's going to happen.
He's pouncing this onto the OJ team as a surprise?
Yeah, the OJ team didn't test this, Tony. Do you think they had him wear the bloody glove? They didn't have him wear the bloody glove, because if they did and it didn't fit, they'd be the ones that asked him to wear the glove.
But do they have anticipation that this is going to happen and therefore they have a plan in place?
No, because F. Lee Bailey, apparently I heard after the fact, and I watched the documentary on this, he turns to somebody, he turns to Van Adder or Tom Lang, and he says, why did he have him put on the glove when he didn't know it was going to fit? I think F. Lee Bailey didn't know either. Nobody knew. This was a shock to everybody.
So Chris Darden thinks he's got the ace up his sleeve, the ace in the hole. He shows up, he's like, you, get up from your seat, put these gloves on in front of the jury, show the gloves. Show the jury that these are your gloves.
I think he knows he's losing, and I think he knows that he needs this Hail Mary pass, excuse the pun, to win. Yeah, he's got a smile on his face right now. He knows it's not fitting. Look at that. Not even.
The first time he holds it up, it's literally at the bottom of his pinky. It ends. It's like, come on, bro. You could pull it a little lower than that.
Yeah, well,
he's
acting a little bit, and also he's got his hands spread really tight, like as wide, so it makes it harder to put on a glove. But clearly it's not going to fit.
Imagine you take your hand and you open up the number 5 as wide as you possibly could, and then you try to put a glove on.
Right, but he's exaggerating, but it is not fitting. That's for sure.
But he also has another latex glove on underneath.
Absolutely.
This is a clown show.
And it's drenched in blood, and any expert will tell you that leather shrinks when it's wet. And blood is thicker. It's not like water. It's got oil in it. It's going to shrink it and dry it a lot smaller than water would. So that's not surprising that didn't fit. What's surprising is
Chris Darden's face.
What's surprising is he put his entire career, his entire legal skill, his reputation, and the verdict down to something that he had no idea what the answer was going to be to. Why would he do that?
I mean, that seems like a major fumble.
Well, he said he admitted later it was a massive mistake on his part, but
let's watch how it ends.
Yeah,
He's pulling him. He's getting it lower and lower every time he pulls. Is it not to our satisfaction, though?
He can't get his fingers inside.
Look at him. Look at him.
Yeah, he's happy now because it's not
He's
fitting.
putting on a show.
Well, because, by the way, he's testifying right now. Do you know that? He's testifying. It's the reason why this is important, and I think this was genius, okay, on behalf, well, it backfired, but it's also genius on behalf of OJ. OJ is now testifying. How's he testifying? He's telling the jury with his body language, with his face, with the hands, it couldn't be me. Look. And he can't even be cross-examined on that. Do you see how Chris Darden messed up?
Yeah, he's speaking without speaking.
That's right. Look at his face. He's got a smirk. He's saying, look, Chris, you're wrong. You got it all wrong. He's
look, I'm trying to pull, but
that's right.
Look at the pink. Look at.
He's even pointing. He's like, look, I can't do it. I can't do it. It doesn't fit.
How could it be me?
Right. How can this be? Do you see the shrug on the shoulder?
Shoulder shrug.
Shoulder shrug.
Shoulder shrug.
I don't know what to tell you. This is not my gloves.
So this is an amazing A-level performance.
Let me tell you.
Of body language, of acting.
So apparently Carl Douglas was interviewed and he said, and Carl Douglas has been doing this 37 years, Johnny Cochran's associate. He said he's never had a better client in his life. He said that OJ's affect was perfect on every single thing. He smiled when it was appropriate. He made a grimace when it was appropriate. Even trying on the gloves, he said it was Academy Award-winning performance.
It really does look like...
So you need a client like that to do things like that, to make the faces at the right times, to convey that without testifying.
And look, we're not body language experts or anything.
You don't have to be when you're shrugging your shoulder and you're looking at the hands.
But you've probably come across body language in the courtroom, or maybe you've had to analyze it before, or at least look at it.
I do all the time, like for little things, like, if I ask you your name, for example, you're not going to look away. You break eye contact. So if you break eye contact with me, I'm going to ask you, why'd you look away when I asked for your name? It's not complicated. So I do look at body language sometimes. And even OJ, he would laugh at like weird points. He's got weird affect in the interviews, which is why I don't think they put him on the stand, because he would have been a really bad person. But during the trial, he's not talking. He's not talking. He's just making faces, and the jury is looking at him. So that, in my opinion, is conveying testimony without conveying testimony.
And like, I come at it a little bit from different, not from the courtroom, but just directing scenes and setting up people and what they're supposed to do. You always think about body language.
100%.
Like, you think about, if this person's powerful, they should sort of be arching over the other person a little bit, just visually communicating things. He understands entertainment. He understands visual communication with your body.
Of course.
It's almost like he's directing himself. I mean, I feel like he's that sociopathic that he's really looking at himself from an outside perspective, like a director would in a monitor, and directing himself. How do I look right now? Am I doing the right thing? Should I smile? And look, the way he pulls on it again, look at that shake. It's like a product demo looking around.
And he's looking at his lawyer.
Humble.
And by the way, he looked at his lawyer to say it doesn't fit. He looked at him with a face and said, look, it's not
now
fitting.
He's kind of smiling.
Now he's
like,
smiling,
this
licking
is
his
amazing.
lips. He's licking his lips because it's just so exciting to him.
He can taste the victory. That's why he's licking his lips.
He's got the biggest smile on his face.
Look at him. And then, no. A little bit of the pursed lips and the tongue is also effort.
Right.
I'm putting effort in this, guys. Look at me.
Right.
A little bit of effort. Again, acting.
A little bit of acting, yeah.
Doing it. And then look at the product demo here.
Right.
Perfectly.
But watch what he does now with his eyes. He looks at the jurors.
What do you think? Eyebrows?
Yeah, he's looking at the back. He's showing everybody, and then he's going to look at the jurors and say, I don't know.
I don't know.
He's looking at all of them. He just did a sweep with his eyes, and he looks at all the jurors and says, I don't know what the prosecution is doing.
I don't know what to make of it. I had nothing to do with it.
That is testimony. It's demonstrative testimony. And it's demonstrative testimony that can't be cross-examined, which is why Chris Darden effed the case by doing that.
And I feel like no doubt, you're right. And I feel like at that moment, he kind of does allow himself a little air of superiority, where he does get larger and taller and his arms extend. He's like, I don't know, this ain't me. He kind of wins. But look at right after, as he's going to go back to sit, he gets humble again. He understands the importance of being humble in the eyes of this jury. Look at him. He kind of slouches again, like, okay, all right, let's go.
Right.
He kind of puts his chin like, okay, am I done here, bailiff? Should I go back? Should I not?
It's the weight of worry on his back and his shoulder. He shows that he's worrying. He's got stuff on his back. So his affect is amazing. I mean, every single thing, the way he looks at the people, the way he raises his eyebrows, the way he shakes his head. I mean, there's no perfect client than O.J. Simpson. I mean, he's a handsome man. He's a smart guy. He knows when to say things and when not to say things. And you know what's really interesting to me is that after that happened, you know, he knew, in my opinion, that it was game over. He knew that he was going to win this case, even though he says
Seems like it, yeah.
even, you know, he starts. If you take a look at him after, he's more relaxed. He's more comfortable. He knows that Chris Darden effed up, and that should have never happened. But you know, let me tell you something else. Even if that didn't happen, he still may have been found not guilty because of what Mark Furman did. But the gloves just put it over the top. We call it the two torpedoes. The first torpedo was the bloody glove. The second one was Mark Furman. So you take your torpedo, any torpedo you want, it just throws it out of the water.
Those are related because Mark Furman, again, was the guy related to the glove. I mean, he's pointing to the glove in the picture. He found the glove at the second location at OJ's home. So, yeah, Mark Furman weighs heavily on both of those. Again, the racist cop framing the black suspect.
Right.
And let's look at the blood vial. What's important about this? This is the before and after.
Yeah. So when you take blood, there's a preservative that you put in the blood that keeps the blood the blood sort of fresh, if you want to call it that. And what was accused in the jury trial was that Fung didn't properly gather and collect the evidence. And therefore, the DNA markers, there are actually markers. It looks like little lines that go across. They're saying that was compromised, which is complete nonsense, by the way.
That seems unscientific.
But remember something. This is 1994. We had no idea what DNA was. This is before Scott Peterson. This is before DNA. So, yeah, you could sell it to a jury that, you know, the markers were off or it was all... You know, it's all discombobulated.
Oh, it's bad.
You could throw a lot of words on that and confuse the jury.
The more words you put, the worse, too. So it's like the best way to like tank a scientific theory for a jury seems to just double down on the science and then double down on the science more. You bring science, I'm going to bring more science. And we're going to just over-science them to the point where they're like,
they don't know.
I just don't even know what you people are talking about.
That's exactly right.
Anymore. Like, you lost me. There are 4... types, guanine and cytosine. It's like, really? You're breaking down base pairs for this jury? Like, how are they going to follow all this? And anyway,
it's science fatigue combined. Science fatigue combined with racial bias equals not guilty.
And there was another thing about the vial you didn't bring up. I remember researching was that there was a before and after photo in the blood vial. So there was blood taken at the scene in a vial or photographed soon thereafter at L.A.P.D. And then there was another photograph of the blood vial and there was less blood. So
was that introduced at the trial?
Yeah, you can see that here. And the defense team, I believe, said it was part of a documentary they did on which they brought in the jurors back decades later. It's an interesting documentary. Check that out. It's actually called The Jurors Speak.
That's what Alan Dershowitz was saying. He was saying that they took it from the vial, but I don't think there's any proof to that.
Well, of course, we don't know what happened, but the photo of the blood vial with blood in it before and then significantly less blood in it later.
Significantly?
This is the picture of a before and after. So
what's the
jury is told the theory that the L.A.P.D. took blood. They took OJ's blood and they littered it upon the scene. I mean, they polluted the scene. What's the word?
Blood splatter?
Yeah.
It's very difficult to do that.
I get it, but if you're showing me a vial that has less blood than before and you're telling me there was LAPD officers in charge of that vial, I can reasonably think they might have dumped it at the scene.
Let me ask you a question. When did he do that? Let's just say he took the blood. When he took the blood in the vial, right? Wouldn't he have to go after the fact, after the murders occurred, to plant it?
Maybe
But they found it in time. The timeline's important. They found the blood very close in proximity to where the glove was and the death was. That what you're talking about now is days after.
Probably.
So what are they saying? They took the blood and they went back and they planted. I don't agree with that theory. I think that's a far-fetched theory. I think the other theory is better.
But the jurors did not like the fact that there was a blood vial that should have been secured and there was blood missing from it and it was in LAPD possession the whole time.
Yeah, and you know what?
They found that as tampering.
And you know what I call that? Criminal defense smoke and mirrors. We do that. We have to do that. I don't know if you know something else. The defense pulled out all the stops. I don't know if you know they changed all the paintings in the OJ house.
The what?
The OJ paintings and the OJ pictures in his house. I'm just letting you know.
I didn't know that. Yeah, tell us about it.
So just to let you know about that, you're talking about the vial and how they're mentioning that it was taken. This is just an example of aggressive, zealous representation. That was a great argument. And to let you know how far they went with arguments, they actually went to OJ's house and took out all the paintings and all of the pictures because it looked too white. That OJ's friend, every single picture was of white people with OJ.
Oh my God.
And Johnny Cochran didn't like that.
Whoa.
Carl Douglas didn't like that.
Really?
So they took all his pictures and they put pictures of him with African Americans that he hardly knows.
Oh my God.
That he hardly knows. Pictures that he hasn't seen in years.
Does the jury tour the house or something?
They toured the house and they wanted to influence the jury to think that he is a successful black man that they're taking down, not a black man that's hanging out with white people everywhere.
So this is interesting. Let's just
So I'm just saying they're pulling it with the blood, with the thing. Johnny Cochran's team pulled out all the stops. I mean,
look, it's an
they
interesting,
did every single thing.
But the
to cause doubt.
perception of O.J. Simpson within the black community,
Yeah.
within the African American community of maybe specifically of L.A., it's an important part of this case, right? Because the jury came from downtown.
Right.
The jury came from
Brentwood. Downtown to Brentwood. His house was in Brentwood or Bundy. Yeah, Bundy Drive.
But the jury, I'm saying.
Yeah, they came to the. They went to his house
I
in
see
Brentwood.
what you're saying. So
They did a tour of his house
one of the interesting facts I learned,
where they allegedly found the glove. Yeah.
one of the interesting things I learned was, again, Marsha Clark's prosecutorial team hired an expert early on, a jury selection expert, a consultant,
Right.
who came in and said, let me tell you something, prosecutors. You're dealing with an African-American man who's a superstar, a legend. We've talked about what a legend he was. And you're opposite him sits the L.A.P.D. The consultant apparently told the prosecutors this. I was reading about this. And it told the Marsha Clark team that black women will tend to be the demographic of a middle age, let's say, will be the demographic that supports this man the most, that believes in this man the most. So be careful of that in your jury selection. The prosecutors went on to fire that consultant. They thought they understood better. They believed black women would actually side against OJ. Don't ask me why. Oh, they felt that, I think, if I remember correctly, that black women might view OJ as a little bit of a sellout, if I'm going to just put it plainly. He was married to a white woman. He had mostly white friends. Right. He came and went mostly within upper-class white society. So Marsha Clark's prosecutorial team apparently thought the better judgment would be put a lot of black women on this jury because they're not going to like this guy. The consultant they hired and paid money to said, no. Black women are going to back this guy because they believe in their bones that the L.A.P.D. is corrupt when it comes to dealing with black men. They're corrupted. They're contaminating the scene. They're, you know what I mean? Racist. So anyway, what did we end up on this jury? Remember?
Well, yeah, we ended up with 10 African Americans and 2 minorities. But you know, that's
mostly women.
That's why they changed the photos, because that was on Johnny's mind. Johnny.
Exactly.
But by the way, I can't believe they got away with it.
What a mistake by Marsha Clark, though.
Not only
you fire the consultant,
well,
you don't listen to this logic.
No, hold on. It wasn't.
Johnny understands the logic.
I'm gonna represent Marsha Clark. It's not her fault. She mentioned it to Judge Ito. Judge Ito let it go. Judge Ito and them she actually saw the paintings were changed. She mentioned this to Judge Ito. Today, you know what that'd be called? That'd be called jury tampering.
I would think so.
Because you're influencing the jury, or jury influencing. I'm basically trying to influence the juries. I can't even believe Judge Ito let that go. But yeah, Johnny had that in his mind. He was like, I don't want them seeing OJ with white people. I want them to think that he is, the same as them, the black people that came from...
Relatable.
Relatable, and if they see him with a bunch of white people, that he's non-relatable. And Carl Douglas said it. He admits it. He was one of the attorneys. He said, "Yeah, we did that. We tried to influence a jury, but it's crazy. That would never happen today."
Okay, but
a lot of things would never happen that happened in OJ today.
It seems like this case was lost in jury selection.
Well, there was an argument to be made that they transferred it from Santa Monica to downtown. They wanted it in Santa Monica. The prosecution wanted it in Santa Monica. Santa Monica at the time was doing criminal trials. And I will tell you, if they did it in Santa Monica, they would have had a predominantly white jury.
Exactly. What would this case look like if it was tried in Santa Monica?
I hope I'm not guilty too. I'm not just saying that.
You can't deny the racial component given everything we've talked about.
But wait a second. Hold on a second. I'm a white person, man. Let me tell you something. I'm not stupid. If they're going to show me a white racist cop and I don't understand the DNA, I'm going to let that guy go, even if I think he's guilty. I'm not going to convict somebody. when I
Okay,
think
interesting
there's doubt.
point. No, interesting point. So you would agree that maybe there's less distrust of the LAPD by white general people in
Of
Santa
course.
Monica,
Yeah.
but that when the Furman torpedo showed up, even an average white person from Santa Monica would be like, this is too much. I mean, you got to let the guy
I'm
go.
not saying that he would have been found not guilty. I'm saying that there would have been people on the jury that would have found him not guilty. It might have been a split jury. It might have been 8-4 guilty or 9-3 guilty. I don't know if you know that OJ was 10-2 not guilty.
In the
Two people-
initial vote, I
two
did
people
hear
were
that.
guilty. So it would have went something like
Well,
that.
hold on. That was just the initial vote.
Right, initial vote.
So it ended up 12.
Right, obviously.
Unanimous not
Yeah,
guilty.
but I'm saying that it would have been more skewed towards the prosecution because of the demographics. Doesn't that suck, by the way? Doesn't the fact that I'm even telling you this, that if they took it to a white jury, it would have been a different result. If you go to Compton, it would have been a different result. It's almost like you're shopping to get a verdict. It's insane.
You're
If you want
shopping for the demographics of the jury.
If you want a great verdict, go kill somebody and do it in Compton. That's the moral of the story. If you're going to kill somebody, chances are I'll get you off in Compton. That's insane.
That's insane. And that's true today, right?
It's absolutely true today.
Nope. Don't go do that.
Yeah, exactly. If you kill somebody in Ventura, you're going to get life. If you kill somebody in Compton, get a guy like me, I might be able to get you off. But it's because of the demographics. Because in Compton, they have a distrust for the police. So all I got to do is raise issues, and the jury's going to say, yeah, I'm not going to convict that guy.
So even if Mark Furman did not exist and this N-word debacle was not out there where he's secretly recorded saying it, but then he takes the fifth on the stand and all that, even then there might have been enough distrust in the police procedure, policy, racist past where they might have acquitted OJ. What do you think?
I think that what it would have come down to is if they had it in Santa Monica, then the question would have been, because Marsha Clark presented this to the jury, she said, Mark Furman is a racist. We get that. We don't like him. We're sorry that happened. The jury couldn't parse that, Tony. They couldn't distinguish that. I think in Santa Monica, they would be able to do that. They would be able to say, okay, this guy lied. Now let's take a look at the glove. So I think the answer would be, the legally correct answer would be, the distrust in Santa Monica wouldn't be as great as in downtown, but they'd still find him not guilty, hopefully. The legally correct answer would be not guilty based on the glove not fitting, based on the other factors that we talked about. There's no evidence as far as, the knife. There's no bloody clothes. There's no witnesses. It's just, the evidence is too attenuated from guilt. Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense. Can you imagine being Marsha Clark and having to get up there and make that statement? You've seen that footage.
Did he lie when he testified here in this courtroom, saying that he did not use racial epithets in the last 10 years? Yes.
She had to get up there, as you just noted, and say, is Mark Furman, our detective, a racist?
Is he a racist? Yes.
Yes.
Right.
Do we like Mark Furman?
Right.
No. Do I? It's like, what are you saying, lady? And then, but
Yeah, exactly.
however, it's not about him. It's about OJ killed these people. Well, nice try, but how are you going to get the jury to go there with you? It's too much of a leap, right? Like
it is. You know what?
even though she's logically, legalistically correct.
You know what I would have done? Can I tell you Marsha Clark's argument? She did it wrong. She was too mechanical. It was fake. Like, oh, do we want him? No. Do we like him? No. That's not how you do it. You do it like this. Mark Furman is a racist. He should have never been here. He should have been fired. He's a disgrace. I'm ashamed to be a prosecutor prosecuting a case where that happened. I want to cringe in front of all of you. I will live with this for the rest of my life. He gives everybody a bad name. That's how you intro it.
But
then you segue it. Now
That's a tough segue.
Now you have to attack him hard. You don't say,
I get it.
Is he a racist? No. Do we like him? No. No.
Yeah. Doesn't work
I
that
get
way.
what you're saying, and you could try the other way, which is fall on the sword, as you're saying. You got to fall on the sword.
Not only fall on a sword, stab yourself several times to the point where the jury says, okay, man, you're beating Mark Furman up. We get it.
You're being too hard on yourself.
Exactly. You have to be more hard
Where
on
they're like,
Mark
calm
Furman.
down. Okay, calm down.
That's right. That's exactly what needs
It's like
to
a
be done.
child, a brilliant child will use this technique if they've broken something, and but they'll come into the room crying. Like it's the end of the world.
Panicking, and they go,
And you,
calm
as the
down.
parent, totally get played, and you're like,
Yeah.
"It's okay. It's
not a big
actually
deal."
okay." And they're like secretly smiling. You
Right.
dipshit. Like this is right?
Yeah, no, it's true.
You're saying she should have tried that.
Yeah, because
she had no choice.
Because she came across as a robot. She didn't come across empathetic, sympathetic. She didn't. It wasn't good. I mean, at least Chris Darden came across with some emotion. I liked the fact that he came across and said, "That's my idol there. I've always loved him. I've always admired him." That was great. But Marsha Clark,
listen, you forget though. Chris Darden came off as a bit of a dupe too, because he was just so mad. He was so personally offended.
Yeah,
and then he was like, "They say they're going to file." They want to file a corrective action against us with the state board. Well, that's okay. I'm also going to file actions. And Ito's looking at them like, this is too petty. And this kind of bickering has to stop. This is ridiculous.
You know what eats me?
It's a circus.
You know what eats me? I get critiqued every day on the internet, in court, by my friends. Why do you represent those people, those guilty people? Chris Darden did the same exact thing. Like, I can't believe, these people get, how do these people get lawyers? Guess what Chris Darden's doing now? He's a criminal defense attorney. Wow. He represents guilty people. So it's okay for you, Chris
Allegedly
Darden.
Guilty people.
Yeah. Well, allegedly guilty people accused. So it's okay for you, Chris Darden, to accuse us, okay, of representing horrible people. But now, after your job is done, after you blow the OJ case and you have no career, and he gets canned from Southwestern, he's teaching at Southwestern or something. After that's done, now it's okay for you to say people have a right to an attorney. People have a right to... I'm not saying that he never said that. I'm just saying that he's always critiqued OJ's counsel.
That's just stupid. I mean, it's obviously a charade because he's he's an officer of the court. He's gone to law school like we have.
Yeah.
He's passed the bar like we have. And can I speak on behalf of your profession for a second, which is criminal defense? I don't do it. You do it. Everybody needs to understand the duality of our criminal justice system. It's designed this way for a reason. It's not perfect, but we're trying to get at the truth. And the only way we feel like to get at the truth is to have both sides battle as hard as they can. Bring us the facts, bring us your persuasive evidence, bring us everything, and let the jury try to dig through that and find the truth. Your key to that, a criminal defense attorney has to stand alongside the accused and marshal every possible defensive argument that they can in the cause of the accused. And we do that so that when we get a conviction, we can rest a little bit easier, so that we can say, hey, they tried to win the case and we got a conviction. He's probably guilty. Of course, we know from our Innocence Project podcast and others, it's not always perfect, but everybody needs to understand how important criminal defense attorneys are in the bigger picture of the justice system.
Marsha Clark is also a criminal defense attorney now.
I love that.
Yeah.
You got to make money at some point,
Yeah.
I guess.
You could poo-poo on criminal defense attorneys until you become one, right? And everybody hates one until they need one.
Right.
We're like the devil until we're not.
I look at it as sort of a machine kind of that's been designed to work, and you need part of the gears of how this machine works and comes against each other and hits and moves to the next. It's like you need this side and you need this side. You need both sides. The teeth have to intermingle and then create a result. The legal machine.
Not only that, but we are the checks and balances of the system. So my job isn't just to get guilty people off. My job is to make sure the prosecution is not effing my client. And that happens all the time where my clients get effed and they do them dirty. You ever heard that term, doing dirty? You know what that means? Mm-hmm. Okay, so doing dirty means when somebody's guilty, but the cops can't really figure out how to, arrest the guy. Mm-hmm. So they do some things.
They find a way.
It's called, and I'll say this, it's called pencil fucking. So they take a pencil and they write in the report that you did something when you didn't do it. Guess what? Now it becomes a fact because the cop says so. Pencil fucking. That happens all the time. That's an actual term. You could look at it online. Mm-hmm. Cops do that. Mm-hmm. So, my job is to make sure they're rogue cops don't take advantage of defendants. I'm not saying that if somebody's guilty, they shouldn't do time. But you shouldn't screw them over just because you think they're a bad person. You shouldn't plant evidence just because you think they're a bad person. And that's why the jury in the OJ case thought that OJ was being done dirty. Mm-hmm. Okay? They might have thought, well, maybe OJ is guilty, but these cops are dirty, and we're not going to let that happen. We're not. It's better let a guilty person go than to have dirty cops dictate our judicial system.
And that's why the standard is set at beyond a reasonable doubt.
Right.
They had more than a few reasonable doubts presented to them.
Absolutely.
The missing blood in the vial, the racist cop,
right.
The I guess the glove didn't fit.
No knife, no clothes, no witnesses, no motive. No motive. I know motive is not an element of the crime, but it's something you could consider. And they dispelled a lot of stuff. They said OJ was upset when he went to his daughter Sydney's performance, and they showed a video. He wasn't upset. He was hugging Nicole Brown's family and stuff like that after. So they were dispelling everything line by line, and it just wasn't enough. They could have convicted OJ for sure, but just the way they presented it to the jury and where they presented it made a huge difference.
It's interesting to wonder what happened that day of that recital, that day of OJ's child's performance, because he went.
Yeah,
Nicole wasn't there.
No, she was, I think, deceased at the time. Oh no, I'm sorry. She was there. She was there, and she was not happy with OJ, but I think the family...
They were on and off,
but they showed a video of him hugging the family and just basically dispelling the fact the family hated him, the fact that he thought he was a monster. They tried to make OJ out to be a monster. OJ basically said, listen, I hit my wife in 1989, but that was it.
Right, but that day, he left the recital, she left the recital, she presumably went home.
Yeah.
He went home, I think.
Allegedly, yeah.
We think that he had thought about inviting his girlfriend at the time,
Paula
Barbieri, to that performance, but then he had decided maybe that's not a good idea. We hear reports that she was upset that she was then not invited or uninvited.
Right.
He got home and there's a voicemail from her on his answering machine, probably an angry breakup of sorts. So is it that now he's enraged because his current girlfriend's breaking up with him? Because he was at the recital with the daughter who he's co-parenting with Nicole, and then he goes over Nicole's house.
Add cocaine to that.
When do we think he did cocaine?
Aaron Parker, who's the limousine driver, said he did coke all the time.
Throughout this whole day?
All the time. Coke. OJ had coke everywhere he went. He had coke of his choice, kind of like, I guess, P. Diddy with his drug of choice. He had coke on him. So he broke up with Paula Barbieri. His ex-girlfriend is seeing somebody. He has no idea. Marcus Allen was one of them that he didn't like. He was seeing another person I forgot for a while. I forgot the gentleman's name.
He kind of made it sound like in post-murder interviews that they were off and on and that they had sort of an open relationship at that point.
He downplayed it like it wasn't bothering him, but according to his...
Seems like it was.
But according to his friends and family, it was really bothering him. According to his sister-in-law, Denise Brown, testified that he threw her up against the wall out of jealousy. Another boyfriend testified that he came to the Roxana restaurant and he barged in and said, "This is my wife. We're not divorced yet." He has documented rage control issues.
Right.
So
this is pure conjecture at this point. We're just looking at what we know. But he's at the recital with the wife.
Right.
We think he loves her or is in love with her still at some level. He gets home and gets broken up with current girlfriend.
Right.
That throws him into a rage.
Right.
He now goes over to Nicole's.
Right.
At some point,
he sees this other
Ron
person.
comes in.
Right.
The dude who she's with.
Right. Not dressed up, by the way. He went home, showered, took off his Mezzaluna clothes. So he's not in his restaurant outfit. So OJ's thinking, like, what the hell are you doing here? He even says, if I did it, he says in his hypothetical, he says, "Why are you here?" Ron says, "I'm here to return the glasses." And OJ says, "I thought to myself, yeah, right. You're here to return the glasses."
Right.
What does that tell you from OJ's mindset? He didn't believe him. He probably thought he was there to basically hook up with Nicole.
Which is the facts.
Probably. I don't
think if nobody who gets home and finds another man claiming to be there only to return glasses, nobody's believes that.
Another question I have is, how the hell did Ronald Goldman know where she lived?
Yeah, that doesn't make sense.
Unless somebody told him, but somebody obviously told him.
They were together, it seems, and I mean,
something.
Isn't that proven?
I don't know.
Is that actually?
I don't think so. Okay. But I mean, OJ.
We should be careful with that then.
Yeah, OJ thought for sure something was going on because, again, I'm only going off of OJ's book, his hypothetical confession, that he said basically, well, if he was there, he said something to me. He may have said something to me in effect of, "I'm here to drop this off," and I was like, "Yeah, right." You could read the book. If I did it, and after he says, "Yeah, right," there was an argument that happened, and he started this martial art thing with him.
He started to do some karate shit with
he
me.
says it in the thing. He says, I did some karate stuff, and he's like, "Oh yeah, you're gonna do some karate stuff on me? Let's see how you do it with this." And he took out his knife. From there, he blacked out.
Do we know if OJ killed these two? Do we know who he killed first?
It would be Mark Furman. Ronald Goldman, because Nicole came out later. According to If I Did It, according to the book, she comes out later, and he blacks out. So
is that what the forensics tell us of the scene? Because to me, it would make sense he would kill her out of a crime of passion, and then he would stumble upon the scene and be a witness. No, but maybe you need him there to infuriate.
My understanding is that he got into a fight with him. He stabbed him in the abdomen or something, and while he was down, he took Nicole by the hair, slit her throat.
Wow.
Again, this is just all conjecture, but just reading the DNA, it happens something to that effect. But here's why it's my educated guess that this happened, because OJ said it. OJ said, well, if it happened, like this.
He really did. Yeah. No, he really lays it all out.
You could think that he says, when OJ, before he died, he goes, well, you could think what you want. I didn't confess. But that's a confession. You could actually use that in a court of law to show the facts are so consistent and it's so coincidental. It had to be analogous to what happened during the crime.
Do yourselves a favor. It's worth watching. Search for it on Google. Body language expert analyzes OJ's confession and If I Did It. Check it out.
Right.
And you'll see a body language expert, doctor, or scientist, just kind of talk about basic things that, of course, this is not necessarily scientific fact, but it's something to help put it in context, that when he's giving this hypothetical replay, OJ is, right? He's in an interview trying to sell the book, giving a hypothetical replay of what might have happened if he was there with a knife and stumbled upon Ron and Nicole. And the body language expert analyzes what happens to OJ's face as he's telling the story. And sometimes when he's seems like he's just fabricating and trying to play a part, his eyebrows get really expressive and he's doing these kind of actor-like things. And other times he looks to the side, looks off to the side, which is what you tend to do biologically when you're searching your memory. When you're actually, Tony Robbins writes about this in his books, and it's an interesting thing where when you're searching your memory things and pay attention to people you talk to, you do tend to take your eyes up and usually to the left. Some people go to the right. So you watch him and he is searching his memory just as he lays out some really gruesome facts about the murder scene. If you believe in the body language analysis, you're like, that's authentic. That's a confession.
I think that he did do that for therapy. It was very cathartic to get him out. He laughs in that interview. He laughs at very inappropriate sections when he says, that's when Nicole got murdered. He starts laughing right after. He's like, I know I'm taking up time from you. And he starts laughing in an inappropriate way and saying why he's laughing. But his explanation for why he's laughing isn't the real reason he's laughing. He's laughing because he's getting it off his chest.
Yeah.
He's thinking to himself, and this is my interpretation, my God, it feels good to talk about this. It's cool because I'm posing it in a hypothetical, but I can't get in trouble for this. And at the same time, he's trying to make money.
You're right. And then there is a moment where he tries to play it off. I remember in that interview, and he's like, this is really hard, trying to make people think you do.
Right.
He's kind of acting like he's trying to make us think that he did it, but his acting seems bad at that moment.
Yes.
Whereas the other times when he's supposedly acting, it seems very real. So yeah, he's got it all backwards.
Yeah, he can't even say that as a murder. It's a problem. He goes, people think that I'm you know what? This kind of dancing around, it's hard for him to accept that he killed him. He knows he killed him. And for him to go in his memory bank, for him to drag it out, if you watch his interviews, when he talks about it, he cuts himself off. He says, I really don't like thinking about that. I really don't like talking about it, because he brings it to the forefront. It brings it to the forefront of his memory, and he doesn't want to go there.
Can we back up? And as we were talking about how the machines of justice work, I can't help but think this case didn't go legally correct. If you ask me, that guy should have been convicted. So that's a miss if you look at it close up.
You think OJ should have been convicted?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm asking myself as a legal student of the law, purely the letter of the law, did this man, I'm not looking at race, I'm not looking at stardom, I'm not looking at the defense dream team, I'm not looking at TV circus. Just as a student of the law, looking at the letter of the law, did this man kill these two people and should he go to jail? Yeah, I think, yeah. So I think we missed. The law missed. But
okay, so what you're saying is in the court of public opinion should have been trickled over into the court. There should have been more of that.
Well, I don't know. Public opinion to me is no arbiter of the truth. So I'm just saying in the universal litmus test of what is true, this case missed. We did not get to the truth.
But okay,
But maybe we
why is it
got
not
to
legal?
a different truth.
Why is
Maybe
it
we
legal?
got to a bigger truth of LAPD corruption. Maybe we got to a bigger truth of police, polluting evidence.
But
or
why?
tampering.
But why is it? Why is it not legally accurate?
Okay, because I believe
legally correct.
Because I believe a man that killed 2 people was acquitted of that murder.
But there's no
because of reasons outside of the facts
So
of the
you're
case.
using your court of public opinion to convict them.
My personal opinion.
Personal. And the internet is like that. The internet will probably agree with you, but it's if you were in my law school class and I was teaching evidence to you, and I said, if there is a situation where the guy tries on the gloves on the major murder and it doesn't fit, that would be something of doubt.
I'm not sure
right?
those gloves didn't fit, if I'm brutally honest. To me, I'm like, they kind of fit.
Okay, take the racist cop then.
Take what out?
Mark Furman's gathering and collecting evidence.
Yeah.
That tends to inculpate him, which means there's evidence that shows that he's guilty.
Yeah.
How can you convict him just on Mark Furman?
So
Forget
to me,
forget the other part. What about Mark Furman?
Yeah,
You can't.
Mark Furman is like is a smoke bomb that clouds the truth.
Okay, so you are a very rare juror. Most jurors won't dive deep into the abyss like what you're doing right now. Number one. Number two,
They won't.
Number two, if you've been in the abyss for 9 months straight, 266 days, you're not going to be hearing me anymore. You want to go home to your family.
Yeah.
And all you heard was a racist cop. You wasted my time. The gloves didn't fit. I'm going home.
I get it.
You're not going to fight it out.
get it.
You and I are going to go back there like, come on, the gloves
Right.
could have fit. He was acting. We're not going to
I
go
get
into
it.
that.
And that's why I feel like it missed.
Well, no, it didn't miss because you got to go back into the time capsule. If it happened today, if OJ, it happened today, he may have been found guilty.
He may have.
May have. But back then, it was the L.A.P.D. who was alleging that this star committed a heinous crime, which didn't make sense.
Okay, but
So the
now,
time period is important.
The time period is where it is. It's an absolute time capsule. We talked about it within the context of the Rodney King beating.
Yeah.
We talked about it in the context of the L.A. riots just a year and a half, 2 years prior to this trial. The race relations between blacks and whites, the race relations between the African-American community and the police department of L.A. particularly, right?
Yeah.
That time capsule.
Yeah.
If you look at it today, I'm not sure police department and minority communities, are we in any better place now than we were during that time capsule? We're now post George Floyd. We're post the BLM riots. Are we in a better place? I don't think we are. I want us to get to a better place.
I think we are. I think it's incremental. They're baby steps, and it's like almost like a 1 step backwards, 2 steps forwards. That's the way
I get that.
That's the way I see race.
And that's how this machine seems to clumsily churn forward towards the northern light.
So if you go from 1960s to the horrible things that police officers used to do to minorities, hosing them down with fire hydrants, we're
Right.
not there anymore.
True.
We're not kicking people off the bus anymore. We're not lynching people anymore. We're allowing people to go to school. One of my best friends is African American. Slept in my house. Love him to death. I mean, things have changed.
So things have changed.
Things
There's
have
no
changed.
there's
Now-
no denying that.
But again, for those people that are watching and it's like, oh, you're a liberal from California, I don't think that's the case. I don't think it's just California. I've been all around the country. I think it's changing. Now, are there parts of the South that are still stuck, in the 60s?
You know what I
Sure.
I see as the problem is that you're absolutely right. The facts on the ground seem to have changed. There is more equality. There is more fairness in the justice system than there was. It's not perfect yet.
Of course not.
Hopefully we're heading towards that North Star.
It will never be there that way, I don't. It'll
Let's aim
always
for
be a
it.
level of prejudice.
We just aim for it, but
Yeah.
we've covered this extensively, but I do think there's one more thing you just touched on, and I had it in my notes. This particular O.J. Simpson trial, this criminal case, had the longest ever jury sequestration in history at the time.
Absolutely.
What another mess up here to piss the jury off. Essentially, when you hear the jurors talk about this experience, they felt imprisoned.
Yeah, because they told him it was 2 to 3 months. Tops.
Even that, RJ.
And then they kept extending it 1 month and 1 month and 1 month and 1 month. And yeah.
it went to 9 months.
Well, yeah.
There's
This trial didn't have to be 9 months. I know judges that would have done this trial in like a month. You know, I can mention Judge Perry. He knows who I am. Judge Perry would have done this trial in a month down in Department 109 in Clara Foltz Shortridge Courthouse. He would have done it in a month.
Okay, 265 days is how many? You say 30.
266.
You would have done 30. Okay.
No, Perry would have done. Judge Perry
would have done
yeah.
30. But here we have 265 days from the research I did. It could be 266. This is how many days these particular jurors were told, you have to stay locked up in a hotel room with sheriffs guarding the exits and entrances, with video cameras watching their every move.
Yeah.
Like being surveilled at all times.
Yeah.
You hear the jurors after the fact talk about the emotional toll that took on them. They miss their family. They miss their kids. They miss their spouses. They start to get depressed. They start to feel sort of like almost separated out from society. Angry. They're angry at this process.
Of course. Yeah.
And then you're asking them to look past racist cops and evidence like that. But the sequestration of this jury, this was a historic mistake as well, right? Do we do this now? Are we sequestering juries all the time?
It's very, very rare. Very rare. I think the last one, I don't know if Phil Spector had a sequester jury. They're very hard because nobody wants to do it anymore. But here's something else that I want to talk to you about. So I don't know if you're familiar with CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy. That's basically brain damage from getting hit to injured, concussions.
Yeah,
for
we hear
football
about
players.
it in sports for football, stuff like that.
Yeah,
Helmet collision.
So apparently that Joe J was diagnosed with that CTE, and
who?
He was diagnosed. I read it. He had
OJ.
Yeah, and they wanted him to donate his brain so they could analyze that, just like Aaron Hernandez, who's a football player who is also accused of murder, who is also a star, who also they didn't see that would ever do something. There's a connection.
Interesting.
There's a CTE connection.
Interesting.
That's the RJ Manuelian thing. The CTE connection is that if you have damage, it makes you aggressive.
Listen, if that was the case, Muhammad Ali would have been a serial killer.
He might have CTE.
He seems like it.
But he had Parkinson's also.
True.
But the thing is with CTE, it does different things to different people. So they're going to use that as a defense initially.
Really?
Yeah, it was actually going to be used to show that Bob Kardashian, I believe, Robert Kardashian was going to use that as a defense and say, listen, if he did it, he was going to go with, he did it, but he did it because he had damage and this has caused him, so it would be involuntary manslaughter.
Got it.
But then when Johnny Cochran came on the scene, he was like, hell no, we're not doing that. We're going all the way.
Wow.
So what's interesting is I would have loved to seen what OJ's brain looked like, because if he had severe CTE, that would kind of explain why he did what he did, because everybody wants to know, why would OJ do something like this? I think it's not OJ. It's exactly what OJ said in the truck. That's not, I don't want you to remember me as a person that I'm accused of. That's a different person. I genuinely believe that OJ didn't know who he was. I think that he had damage and that his anger couldn't be controlled.
Well, doesn't the law already understand and to some degree take into account crimes of passion like this? Like if you discover your spouse in bed with another man, if you discover your wife in bed with another man, if you discover your husband in bed with another woman, your spouse, and you murder them both, the crime kind of mitigates the level of culpability there, right? I mean, in criminal law, we see sort of mitigating factors for these kind of emotional
It does, but the reason why I think they didn't go along with it, there was an impediment, a huge impediment. The impediment was it looks too premeditated. He had gloves, he had everything on him. So if this was anger, it was too
Let's
premeditated.
elaborate on this because this is interesting. And now I'm thinking back to the fun days of law school where this was a big deal, where you read the case. Husband walks into a room, catches his wife in bed with another man, happens to have a gun on him, kills them both on the scene, right? We have to understand how different that is from that husband then drives home, gets his gun, comes back, and then shoots them both. That little bit of time to think, that little bit of time to go home, get your gun, think about it, meditate on it.
It could be 1 second. If you have a cooling off period, then it's not voluntary manslaughter. So if I walk in on my wife and I get pissed off and I stab her to death and I stab her lover, that could be voluntary manslaughter. But if I go take a shower, I go look for a knife, I go shopping for it, I come back,
grab a mask, grab some gloves,
come back, now you're talking about murder. So That's why I think OJ's team didn't go for it, because they thought about it. And again, these are all innuendos and things that I've researched, and it makes sense that he had CTE, he could have been damaged. Otherwise, why would he do?
I think OJ didn't go for it. I think OJ is a winner. He's a winner-minded guy, and they probably somebody presented it that thing. Hey, we could do this, Juice, and we could just say, look, you did it, but look, here's why. You loved her, and she did this, and
That's right.
And he said, no. I didn't do it. Why would we do that? I didn't do it.
Say that.
And then probably Cochran and Shapiro said, he didn't do it. Let's go.
Exactly what happened.
Yeah, it feels like that's what happened.
That's exactly what happened. And that only happened because the guy's a narcissist. The guy thinks he could talk his way out of it.
He will not
take
a loss. Not voluntarily.
No.
That's not the person. That's not the mindset of that NFL legend.
You got to remember something. He loves, if you Google research him, he'll say the number one thing he wanted all his life was people to adore him. Adulation. He said, I wanted people to know me and call me the Juice. So his reputation was the most important thing to him. More important than actually getting convicted. That's why he went on this, public speaking tour. He wants to rehabilitate his image, because his image is so important. So a narcissist is going to go in and talk to the cops and say, what do you want to know? Tell me. Because they think they could talk their way out of it.
Yeah.
They have control. They could talk their way out of it. And OJ said something very interesting. He said, why would I do this? I'm OJ. I mean, he thought he had built up good credit for the jury to say, you know what, OJ, I don't know if you did it or not, but I'm going to give you a pass because I've known you on TV.
Yeah.
I know that you catch an oblong ball and you've gotten trophies for that.
Yeah.
I know you're on TV saying some things. I'm going to give you the pass.
You've got an incredible smile. You're super successful.
Smile. You're handsome.
You speak incredibly well.
Right.
Every word you say.
You must be not guilty. Combined with the fact that you have a racist cop, combined with the fact that the gloves go, I'm going to give you a pass.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you something else, Tony. Do you think that if it was my client, some other African-American kid on the street that did that, do you think he would have got the same shake as OJ?
If the L.A.P.D. committed the kind of misconduct they seem to have done here, or at least if
take away the star power.
Take away the star power, it's that Mark Furman debacle with the N-word.
Maybe, but I think
that's still there. That case is lost in my book.
Your book is correct, but the fact that it was OJ, remember,
another level.
Two people found him guilty. Okay,
in the initial drawing.
Yeah. So if it was an OJ, I would predict it would be like 8-4 guilty or 9.
Potentially, that makes sense.
So the OJ star power. Remember, Michael Jackson was found not guilty.
It might have been enough to put it over the line.
Yeah, Michael Jackson was found not guilty. There was a plethora of evidence against him, and he bought some. Got some great representation. I'm not saying that is guilty per se, but there was a lot of evidence against him, and he had that star power, right? And OJ had that star power.
Yeah.
Most stars have that ability to overcome the presumption of guilt, because there is a presumption of guilt when you're arrested, even though there's a presumption of innocence by law. People in a court of public opinion say, well, why would they arrest you if the cops didn't think you did it?
True.
So as soon as you get arrested, people are thinking, well, he must be here for a reason.
True.
People aren't wasting their time. But the fact that he's a superstar, now it makes you think, wait a second, you got the L.A.P.D., who I don't trust, accusing this superstar who would he slit somebody's throat? Why would he do that? It doesn't make sense.
Doesn't make sense.
But getting back to CTE.
It's crazy enough to get away with.
So to get back, I think that if he had anger problems, which he has anger problems, and if you watch videos of him, he admits he beats his kids up, and he says he calls it discipline. Yeah, I've disciplined Justin. He was like, oh, you've gone toe-to-toe with him? And OJ said, yeah, I've gone toe-to-toe with him. You could ask him. He was like, he gave me some lip, and I told him where it's at. Translated, he probably got into a fight with him. Yeah, beat his ass. So OJ isn't light-handed. He's beaten people up before. I mean, clearly, when you watch the video of Nicole's face, I don't care what OJ says, that's not makeup, it's not fake. He beat her up. Okay, so clearly he's got anger problems. So now the question becomes, why is OJ so angry? Okay, he seems like a nice guy. His mom is a very nice person. His dad is a very nice person. I contend and I propose that this person changed at some point because of brain damage that happened to him. And I think that CTE was a contributing factor. Do I have any evidence to that? No, but they're doing research on Aaron Hernandez regarding that.
It's an interesting theory. And like, if you look back in 92, I don't think we knew what CTE was.
No.
I mean, I hadn't heard anything about it. And then now you fast forward decades and decades and decades later, and you seem to be honing in on it. And maybe we're getting a little closer to that as an explanation. Fast forward another decade or two, it might actually be something we use in legal standards and these kind of criminal liabilities, right?
And it's a shame that OJ didn't allow his brain to be donated, because if he did, then we would be able to see if he has CTE. And then if he did have bad CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy, then we would be able to say, okay, this makes sense. The guy had brain damage. Maybe that's what triggered him. Maybe that's why he wasn't thinking straight, right? But the science wasn't there in 1994.
Yeah.
It's barely here now.
Yeah.
With Aaron Hernandez, we just discovered that recently. Why would a guy so famous playing for the New England Patriots decide to be a gang member, decide to go and stab and kill people? It didn't make sense.
Right.
But when you take a look at the brain, if something is wrong with the brain, then it makes sense. And these guys are getting banged up, and concussions, and CT is a real thing.
It's a real thing. Yeah. It's all sort of in the scientific literature now.
Football players especially have it.
Yeah.
OJ was a football player, killed somebody. Aaron Hernandez was a football player, killed somebody. Aaron Hernandez had CTE. I believe that OJ had CTE too. That's what's out there. If you Google that, there's research and reports that show that. So, was OJ a bad guy? I think at some point, I think it wasn't him. I think it was somebody. He nails it on the head. Don't look at OJ for what he's being accused of. Remember me for who I was. In other words, translated, that's not who I was all my life. And he even says when I blacked out, I couldn't remember what happened. I can't accept that I would do something like that. So
I mean, we all are a spectrum of personalities. We all have angrier moments and lighter, more calmer moments. We all have moments of empathy, but then we have moments of anger and rage, which we have to try to control. But all that being said, every one of us has to battle these instincts, and we either the better angels win or the lesser angels win. It's hard to draw the line here in terms of culpability. I guess you just have to refuse those instincts when they come up. He still did what he did, regardless of whether he wanted to be that guy. Right. And this is me personally. This is me personally opining on it.
It's not a defense. It's just what we call in law a mitigating factor.
It does seem like it could be a mitigating factor.
Means let's just say you're convicted. If OJ was convicted, right? This is what I would do if I was OJ's lawyer. Your Honor, the jury found him guilty. We're going to appeal. But here's the thing. We have evidence that shows that OJ had chronic traumatic encephalopathy.
Yep.
And then you show pictures of it. And then a doctor comes up and says how that affects his ability, his cognitive skills.
Yes.
His ability to control his rage and things like that. And then, for example, instead of getting, I'm making this up, 35 years to life, you might get 25 years to life.
I get you. It's a mitigating factor, but still accepting the fact of the crime.
Yeah, the culpability is there, but it's explained why the culpability is there.
Well, we didn't get that in this case.
No.
And we usually wrap these up by saying we'll come back and see what happens. Nothing's going to happen because he passed away.
Yeah, nothing happened because he passed away, and
it's done. This is over.
Yeah, it's over right now. And what's also interesting is what happened to the real killers. Apparently, OJ was spending money and trying to look for the new killers. Every time he was asked about that, he dodged that question, right? How come nobody's looking for the real killers? I mean, that's got to be something that's on everybody's mind as well.
Yeah.
And what about the kids? How about them? Nobody talks about them. Poor Justin, poor Sydney. Yeah. Ronald Goldman's dad's never going to have closure. Poor bastard.
Yeah.
Imagine what he's going through.
Terrible for the
Feel for him. Pain.
Now, the Goldman family did get some comeuppance against OJ, right?
$900,000.
Is that what it was? Well, I mean, at least I think the money's one thing, but they did publicly sort of retry him in the civil.
Yeah, they did. But
civil cases and kind of won, right? So they
I'm saying, did they win in the big? They won the money, but OJ was still golfing. OJ was still partying. OJ had a beautiful girlfriend.
Yeah.
OJ was drinking and laughing and nothing affected OJ's life
until he screwed up again and then went to prison for 30 years.
And the only reason he got sentenced to 30 years, and the judge admitted that because she was an activist judge, which I completely disagree with. She punished him for OJ's murder case.
Okay.
Nobody in the world would get 33 years for that robbery. When you walk in and try to get your memorabilia back and you didn't point a gun, you just happen to have it.
Right.
Nobody was hurt. Nobody would get 33 years for that.
Okay.
The reason they gave him 33 years, they were punishing him for the murder that he never got found guilty with, and the judge admitted that. And that's wrong.
Can I take a
Very
second?
Wrong.
In a sense, it is wrong. I'm with you.
Yeah.
And I'm standing looking at the criminal justice system going, that result is wrong. This result is wrong. That result's wrong.
Yeah.
Can I take a second to admire this sort of the sweet harmony of this? If you zoom out and go back to the LA
karma?
Yeah, the karma of it. It kind of is working. It's just clumsy.
Law is not karma.
I know, and it's clumsy, and it's weird, and it's late and delayed, and it works in weird ways, but it seems to work. You back up and you go, Rodney King, those cops screwed up. They were evil, racist cops. Did they get convicted? No, they get let go. What? OJ, revenge for Rodney King. Now this screwed up racist cop, he doesn't get convicted, but at least he gets found liable for lying, or at least OJ gets let go as a weird comeuppance against the cops. And so could there be some sweet revenge in the OJ acquittal for the Rodney King acquittal? And then you fast forward to OJ being convicted by this activist judge for breaking into a hotel room in Vegas. Now he's convicted for this long-term thing. None of these results are correct, but then when you back out and you look at them all together, you're like, okay, everybody kind of got what they deserved.
But I don't think Ronald Goldman's father was happy about that. Fred Goldman said, I don't give a crap if he's doing 100 years for the robbery case. He's not doing any time for my son's case. So that was the real point.
Fair. I get that as sort of a father thinking through that. I mean, that
so
must be horrifying.
Justice wasn't served in that case, according to Ron Goldman.
Right.
I mean, maybe you could throw 1,000 years at him for another case, but he wants closure in his case. He wants OJ serving time thinking about him killing Ronald Goldman, him killing Nicole Brown Simpson. So, I don't like that stuff too. That judge messing up. That's why I'm saying, that's why I became a criminal defense attorney. I don't like it when people take their own power and they think they're so powerful they could do whatever the hell they want. That judge throwing 33 years, I get it. OJ's not a nice guy. Nobody likes him, but he didn't deserve 33 years.
Not for that particular fact
crime.
pattern.
In fact, I would even go so far as not even prison time on that. Nobody got hurt.
Interesting.
He should have got maybe time served.
So that was time. For sure that was retribution for the OJ trial.
Well, Google it.
It has to be. It's obvious.
See what the judge says. The judge says she admitted that she sentenced him because of the murder case that he got away with. That's not what judges are supposed to do.
Two wrongs don't make a right.
That's not what, that scares me, because then what other judges are doing, other things they're not supposed to be doing. How about extra sentences and activism that they're not supposed to be doing?
It's the same as the police officer planting coke, because this guy's guilty. I know he's guilty, but I put a little coke there, so what?
That's called doing it dirty. That's why the jury thought that Mark Furman was doing OJ dirty. Mm-hmm. That's why they let him go. That's what the judge did. He did OJ dirty, okay, for whatever you want to call it. You want to call it payback, retribution, whatever. Nobody does 33 years on a freaking robbery case, okay? Yeah. Not like that. I'm sorry. I've done this for a long ass time.
Yeah. How much of that time did he end up doing?
He did 9 years, but that's
and then
even
what happened? He just got out on good behavior?
Got out, yeah. The odds of him doing it again were slim to none. He even said that. He's like, he's just trying to get back his memorabilia, which he did it. It's called replevin in law. When you go grab it, you're like, it's mine, you can't do that, but that's what he did. And one of his buddies happened to have a gun on him. Boom, you got the robbery card right there. That's it. If he didn't have that gun and they just walked in and said, give me back my shit, that wouldn't have been a strong arm robbery.
Whoa.
Yeah, he wouldn't have done that kind of time.
So you don't see some strange karmic play there. You don't see that the universe is paying him back.
Maybe, but I think the judge had a lot to do with it. I think
the judge is the arm of the universe.
Yeah, the arm of the universe. She should have. Would I have done that? I wouldn't have done that. I would have told OJ on the record, I would have loved to throw you in jail. And I would have said something like, OJ.
Put it on the record, but say the law is more important.
The law is more important. I would say, OJ, I thought about giving you 33 years and maxing you out.
I like that.
Because you got away with murder. You know it. I know it. And on top of all that, OJ, you're still committing your shenanigans, and I think you deserve it. However, I think that would be a great injustice for me to take your guilt, where you were found not guilty under our due process, and repunish you. It'd almost be like double jeopardy again to give you that crime. And I'm not going to do it, but I want to let you know what my thoughts are and that I believe that you did it. But I'm only going to give you 3 years. That's it. That would have been it. Now, people would have yelled at me in the news, and the judge goes easy on OJ. Be like, no, this is what I do. I give 3 years on all these kinds of cases.
Yeah, it had to be sort of comparable to the other
And
cases.
It's not comparable.
Yeah.
What she gave OJ was not comparable.
Yeah, so that shouldn't
nobody
have
cared.
That shouldn't have happened.
Isn't that crazy? Nobody cared.
Nobody cared.
It's okay to violate the rights of somebody that you don't care for.
Right.
But then when it happens to another individual, like, no, it shouldn't happen in this case.
Right.
So that's what I have the problem with. That judge, I think, went a little overboard. But,
Agreed.
OJ, karma.
Well,
what goes around comes around.
I think we pretty much covered it. Should we wrap it? See you on the next one?
Yeah, we'll see what happens.
No, he's dead. There's nothing happening. That's why we don't have our usual out. All right, we pretty much covered this one or what?
Yeah, OJ, rest in peace.
I don't even want to say that. Should I say rest? I don't want to say rest in peace to him. You know what I mean? But I don't. Maybe he's resting, maybe he's not. Let's leave it at that.